I wonder if the culture war can be rooted in morality. Does the left, the Black Lives Matter people, do not share the same morals as most Americans?
No, of course not.
But because most Americans have, I guess, gotten complacent and accepting, they're letting a small faction of fringe individuals lie to them, push insane policies, and just seize power.
1,000,000%. So I find this really fascinating. Oftentimes people will say that public schools are used to propagandize children, and I couldn't agree with that anymore. But the reality is, if you want to instill your tyrannical philosophy in the state or in the minds of the average person, you don't really have to do all that much work indoctrinating them into your ideology. All you really have to do is ensure that they are raised without any real virtues. And what will happen is, as they become adults, they will have been habituated towards taking the path of least resistance in their personal social lives. And any time they're in a situation where speaking out might become uncomfortable or make the situation uncomfortable or unpleasant, they're not going to do it because, again, they've habituated themselves towards doing what is least difficult. And so when you do have the people you have indoctrinated into your system achieving cultural ascendancy, they won't stand up against that.
I wonder if, they call it white supremacy. But I wonder if that's just, first of all, I think they say it's white supremacy and whiteness first they said white supremacy. Now they say whiteness, which is kind of creepy. But it's very obvious they were trying to change the definition of a word, finding something that people would find morally repugnant, and then claiming anything they didn't like was that word.
Yes.
And they play with definitions all the time. I wonder if what they're really going after is just the moral foundations of Christianity.
That's
or Judeo-Christian morality.
And that's why I mentioned that the French Revolution and the terms right and left basically come from a war for or against Catholicism and traditionally Catholic values. And in the United States has never been a Catholic nation, but it's been Christian, and there are certain principles that Protestants and Catholics share, and I think those are the ones that are generally under attack by the far left at this point in time.
Sorry to interrupt. Were you?
No. I just want to drop one more thing. You mentioned earlier about people saying that they don't need religion in order to be moral, and this is something I heard time and time again. But then oftentimes these same people will turn around and say the only case against abortion is a religious one.
Okay, I was thinking about the French Revolution and how they had a god king, basically.
Yes.
The king was God. Louis was a king. He was God.
I don't know that he was a god. There was
divine right.
Yeah, so there was
divine providence.
There was the divine right of kings, but nobody thought that he was a god.
Well, the French revolutionaries wanted to undo God. They basically wanted to do away with church, and that was part of it. Is get rid of the king, get rid of the church. Let's start over new. Let's start a new calendar, new everything, and they were villainous. Robespierre was a psychopath. He gained power and became super corrupted. Danton was like the second in command, also a crazy, violent guy. But they overthrew the monarchy, which was ripping people apart. It was starving the country. It was causing tremendous
This is the
poverty.
It's the pendulum swing. It's you have one really bad situation and it gives rise to another really bad situation from really bad people.
So I think the Black Lives Matter see this situation like that, even though I don't think it's that bad at all.
Yeah, it's social media and the media creating the perception of chaos. When then they bring the chaos. I can't remember. Someone tweeted this. I can't remember who it was. Some high-profile Democrat saying like, "When will Donald Trump?" Oh no, it was like a news outlet saying, yes, there have been riots, but Donald Trump needs to take responsibility for the right-wing militias that have been starting the fights.
That's so insane.
That's never happened. And so these people, you know what I think it is? I think these people have all fallen into the toilet whirlpool together, where you've got, like, imagine this table right now. Imagine if I looked at you and said, hey, I heard there were some like crazy right-wing dudes coming. Pass it on. And then you looked at Ian and said, crazy right-wing dudes are coming, pass it on. Then Ian looks back at me and says, dude, we're about to get a wave of crazy right-wing dudes. And then I'm like, dude, they're coming. Seamus, the right-wingers are about to be here. And it just keeps getting crazier every time it goes around in a circle. And it was all like me, starting with me going, hey, do those guys look like right-wingers to you?
Yep.
And then you're like, yo, Tim just saw a bunch of right-wingers coming. And then you're like, dude, right-wingers are coming to attack us. And then I'm like, I saw them earlier. You're right, Ian. That's the only thing that explains it. If I saw them and now you're saying it, what it really is they're in a toilet spinning around in circles.
Yeah.
And the rest of us are not in that toilet. They've created this perception, and then from it, they burst from the toilet covered in human waste, going, smashing windows and screaming, the end is nigh.
It's that game of telephone. You know, you ever play telephone where you whisper something in someone's ear, then they whisper it, and then you see how accurate it is when it gets back to you around the circle. But I wonder if the people in control of the news organizations are actually seeding bad info to create.
No.
Well, it's
no.
Yeah.
Having worked at them, I'll tell you what it is. It's a lack of ethics. It's a lack of morality. It's a desire for profits and revenue. It's not. I wouldn't necessarily call it in malicious intent. I would call it like it's not willful. It is malicious, but it's the product of the system where the dude in charge of the money doesn't know or care about politics. So he sees an article and says, "Whoa, that one got a bunch of clicks.
Yep.
Who's Donald Trump? I don't know, man, but get more people to do whatever that was." Then the editor-in-chief is just like, "Wow, they're saying we got to get more of this stuff." They look at a resume. "So you wrote this Donald Trump is literally Hitler piece. Welcome aboard." And they shake their hand. And it's not so much that they're being told to lie. It's not that their boss is like, "We must have you lie about Trump." It's like they're literally sitting there hearing their own refuse back in their own heads.
Yeah.
And then, so that's the point I was making. Imagine if I said to Seamus, "I think I saw some right-wing guys." And then he said, "Yo, Ian, Tim said right-wing guys were coming." Then you run to me and go, "Dude, right-wingers are coming here." And then I went, "Whoa, I just saw them. If you're saying that too, it must be true." That's exactly what's happening in newsrooms. And they keep writing it up. Then these leftists who believe all of the media, and that's a big divider in the culture war, they believe all this stuff, run around screaming the militias are coming, smashing windows and burning everything down. And then the media goes, "Ooh, did we incite that? Let's just not talk about it. They're peaceful." They were peaceful the whole time.
Well, yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. Part of where I'm conflicted here is I tend to agree with your position, which is that they're caught in these echo chambers and they don't necessarily mean to lie, but the story just gets more and more out of control and they believe that they're on the quote unquote right side of history, so anything that they say will be justified. But the narrative also changed really quickly once it was obvious that the American people didn't support the riots and weren't sympathetic to them. At first it was, well, rioting is the language of the unheard, and then as soon as public perception and opinion, as soon as public opinion towards Black Lives Matter turned, they started saying, "Oh, well, it's actually right-wing agitators." So that's why I'm a little skeptical of the idea that it just got out of control. It seems like a direct shift based on what they now knew public opinion was.
I think the media is blindly chasing after whatever works, and the Democrats just trust the media.
Yeah.
So,
fair.
like, mail-in voting is a good example. There was a story in Axios today saying that Democrats are pivoting away from it now.
Really?
Yeah. It's one story. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but there are several organizations now telling people to go drop your mail off in person. And I see this from a ton of activists. They're saying, don't trust the post office, things like that. You've got to make sure you mail it in person. And why so late? How is it that the day the story drops about primary ballots being discarded, here I am saying, wow, look, primary ballots got discarded, breaking news from, say, Politico. And then I get all the people watching it and we all talk about it. And the left is like, what ballots?
Yeah.
So I know this guy, and he tweeted, he like some cringe leftist tweeted something about, Trump is going to stage a coup and he's refusing to give up power. And then this guy I know tweeted, "Where's the lie?" And my response was, I'm like, dude, challenging, filing a lawsuit about contested ballots is not staging a coup.
No.
Telling, Hillary Clinton telling Biden not to concede is not Biden staging a coup. Y'all need to relax. And then and then his response was, "What ballots?" So you mean to tell me it's been like 3 months since the stories broke about the mail-in votes disappearing or not being delivered, and you didn't know about it? You're this late to the party. And now the Democrats finally catch up. So with Black Lives Matter, when before George Floyd died, support for Black Lives Matter was at 17 or 18% net support, meaning, that's like there's more support than opposition.
Yeah.
Then George Floyd died and it spiked to 25. Today, it's at 10.
Yep.
It is lower now than it was before the George Floyd incident because the Democrats were watching the media say peaceful protest. Just peaceful protesters. Some peaceful protesters choose more confrontational tactics.
Yeah, 93% peaceful. That's my favorite.
And they still say that stuff. And regular Americans are like, why did the guy on TV say it was peaceful when I literally just got sent a video of a dude burning down a pawn shop or shooting a guy in the chest?
Well,
what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say it's really funny that they're talking about this 93% number, and I think they've mostly dropped it. I haven't heard it frequently.
Some ESPN guy just spewed it out again.
Oh,
93% of the protests are peaceful. 93% of serial murders, or 93% of the time, serial killers are peaceful too.
Well, and also, 7% of protests becoming violent is a massive number when you're dealing with a country as large as the United States. And every major city across it has protests within it. 7% is not a small number. And that's why it's funny because I saw left-wingers saying that, only 93% of them are peaceful. And then I'm not sure where that metric came from. So I'm not going to say it's wrong to be skeptical of it, but a lot of right-wingers were saying, no, this is fake news from the left. It's like, dude, even if that's not fake news, that's really high. Like, you're missing the point. 7% is a lot.
I mean, it's the fake news about it is how they're they're changing the argument. My argument is, wow, these violent protests are horrifying. It's too bad they're not like the peaceful protesters. When the peaceful protesters went on the bridge and laid down on their stomachs and put their hands behind their back and got a bunch of press attention, I said, that's awesome. I said, I disagree, but, hey, man, peaceful protests, this country's all about it. Then another group went around smashing windows and, like, beating people. And I said, well, that's terrible. And that was the message we got. And then they, instead of arguing that, instead of just agreeing that it's bad, they argued, but what about all of the peaceful protests? Nobody's complaining about all the peaceful protests.
Exactly.
That's not the news story. We get their peaceful protests. We don't talk about them because they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, that's just called a protest. It's
Right.
funny. Well, yeah, this is completely insane. It's completely insane. But when you have, you mentioned earlier this, like, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. I apologize.
How dare you?
I know.
Quick,
I feel
quick,
this is
quick,
so
do it.
embarrassing. Don't make fun of me. Do I
Quick,
need to
do a
an
Ben
impression
Shapiro
now?
impersonation.
Okay, folks, so he lost his train of thought because he's an absolute idiot. He was thinking about something related to what old Tim Pool just said over there, and then it slipped his mind as soon as he started talking about it, and then he trailed off, and it was really embarrassing. So can we please just not draw attention to it, folks, okay?
It reminds me of, like, the Family Guy joke of the vaudeville piano players. And as soon as they
Yes.
script, quick, play me out. And they're
Play
like,
me out.
get away. They lost his train of thought. It's
No,
over. This clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. So come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.